Thank you for joining me today. I am making 4 pairs of quite narrow curtains, so not the full width of fabric. I'm putting tape on the back and the lady's going to be hanging them on rings with little clips at the bottom. I don't think there's very much for me to talk about, but let's get on with the project, and if I find something I'll let you know. Let's get on with it. I need 3 lengths of fabric for the curtains. They are 99 from the bottom of the rail to the floor. So what I need to do is cut 99 plus 4 is 103. So I need to cut 3 lengths at 103. I think the first one I'm going to cut is 104 and then 2 at 103, just to make sure that everything's even. This is thermal lining. So there's a right side and a wrong side. This is the right side. You can tell it's a slightly different colour. This is woven and this has the thermal against it, which means I'm going to measure up 33 3 times and then add 4 inches. So there's 33 there. Got a little nick in at the top and pull it back down. There's my nick. I'm going to stretch it out, find my little clip there with the 33 and cut the next one. So now I've got 66 and I'll do that for a 3rd time and then add my 4 inches to the top. Because the lining goes up an inch, I don't have to make an allocation for the fold. Again, line it up with my 33. I'll be cutting the front fabric out exactly the same way, and I'll just add my 4 inches for the hem. I don't have to double check because I measured and cut every piece that I needed to measure off. Now I'm just going to roll that out, fold the lining back against that cut like that, keep the sides even like that, and make sure that I have a straight line from one side to the other. So I'm going to make sure that the selvages are lined up on the other side, and then I'm going to cut along the fold, and that'll be my first length. Just takes a little bit of time to pull everything out to make sure it's nice and even. Now, the nice thing about having a rather large table is once you've cut the first length like this, is you carry on unrolling your lining or fabric, and then you line your first cut on top, which also encourages you to make sure that your measurements are correct the first time, because I have in the past cut lining, miscalculated, lined it up for the next one and carried on cutting, and ended up with a selection of lining that is the wrong cut. Then, because I've always had so much fabric, I had to label the length if it was too short, so that if I've got another pair of curtains that were that short, that I could use it for. And I'm just going to go all the way along here to the other end. Make sure the other end is lined up too. So this is her window A, which is the actual width of the window. She's done a right window and a left window, which is good. And then what I asked her was the measurement between the bracket to the bracket. So we're going to do the left window first, which is 63.5. So if I say 64 inches is the width, 64 divided by 2 is 32 inches. So that would be the distance from the last rings each end of the curtain. So I need to add 4 inches, which is 2 inches either end, so that the ring isn't right on the end. So that's 32 plus 4 is 36. Okay, so we've got 36 inches. And then I also need to do 2 inches on either side for the fold. So I need to cut this piece of fabric 40 inches wide to get my curtain out of 36 inches. I keep losing things. I don't know what I'm doing at the moment. Every time I start something, I lose something. Okay, so I'm going to use my quilting thing to measure. It's a bit ungainly, but it works. I'm going to measure the hem across first, steam that there, and then I'm going to come across here a little ways and make sure that that is also at 4 inches. I'm going to pull one end against the other so that it's as even as it can be for that distance. Plenty of steam. Once I've gone all the way across the first time, I'm going to just fold that raw edge into the fold of the hem, and then I'm going to steam that into place as well. Just make sure it's nice and tight in there. Now this is the exact method I used for the lining. Folded it over 4 inches and then down, so it's a 2 inch hem. and again do this all the way across, and then it's nice and even. As I did with the lining, I'm just going to line the top of the fold along the inside piece of metal there on the foot, not the piece that drags it through. I ended up using my walking foot because I couldn't get the lining to start properly, kept rucking it up. I then decided to leave it on, so there we go. I'm going to sew that on the second largest stitch all the way across. I think before I actually take the side off to make it 40 inches, I'm going to do it this way. Take the side up here 2 inches in. I'm going to do that all the way up the side here to the top. I'm going to cut this piece off as I go, like that. Having done that, I'm going to fold that in as I had with the bottom hem. Fold that in and steam that into place as well, just so it's nice and tight. So I've got this side folded in quite nicely. Put my yardstick on that side and pull it across until I get to the second side, which is about here. Put my finger on there and put my pin in. It doesn't matter if I've cinched it in a little bit, it'll be fine. There's my turning point. Having got that, I'm going to measure across my 2 inches from there. Now always make sure that you do all your measurements, because if you get it wrong, you've got a lot of mending to do. So here's my fold and here's my cut line, and I'm going to measure from the end of there to my cut line, which is 15 3/4 inch. It might be a little bit over, but to lose a little bit is not going to be a problem. So I'm going to cut 15 3/4 inches. I will measure because sometimes the weaving going up and down aren't as obvious as the weaving going across. Put my first cut there, put that there, and cut up. I'm going to do that all the way up the length of this fabric, and then I'll fold my 2 inches in as I have just done and make my side hem. When I come to do the lining, I'm going to make sure that that is actually 35 7/8, not 36 inches, because it tucks in and the fabric rolls around it, so you don't want it to be bulky. You want it to be a little bit on the shy side, but not too much. It's real simple, you just got to keep an eye on your measurements, that's all. As with the half width of the pink fabric, I'm going to put the raw edges together there, and it comes down at a bit of an angle. Then I am just going to cut along the fold like this. Pull it down, readjust it. It's probably the easiest way of doing this, to be honest. Otherwise you've got to run a measuring tape all the way along the side to get the same measurements. If there's a slight discrepancy, it's going into the side hem of the curtain, so nobody will ever see. The second window, which is 45 1/4. Let's round that up to 46. 46 divided by 2 is 23, plus 4 would be 27, and then I need the returns, 27, 29, 31. So I have to have the front fabric 27 inches wide. So let's check that. I think I've got to put extra fabric either side. This is 28 inches. So I actually need to add 4 inches. Could be a little bit less than 27 because I have actually overdone it by about 1/4 inch. So what I need to do is put a length of fabric on this side and a length of fabric on that side, which will fold into the back and not be seen from the front. Now I've made sure that the sides of this are all even to the top, and I'm going to put both raw edges together like this. I'm only going to put a foot width on. I would prefer to put less on, but foot width kind of allows me to keep everything straight. So I'm going to go forward and back at the bottom. I'm not going to pull, I'm just going to hold them together and make my way to the top as evenly as I can, which is a little bit awkward because the fabric underneath is a little bit heavier because there's more of it than the fabric I'm putting on top, but it'll be okay all the way. It has to be even because I don't want one fabric being pulled against the other, otherwise that will wrinkle on the back, and I want it as flat as I can on the back. I am going to cut it down midway between the raw edges and my sewing, because I really don't want a big bulky seam under there. I want it as flat as possible. So I'm just going to take that down. It looks counterproductive, put a wide seam on and then cut it back. I just find it easier to hold everything in position if I'm going to be doing this kind of thing, and then take it down. So I'm going to put the second side on. I will not use this. I'm going to cut that back because it does show up on the other side. So I'm just going to pop that down there and do exactly the same. Line that up. I'm lining the raw edge up with where the selvage is, not on the ends of those, but where the actual selvage starts. And I'm going to forward and back just a couple of stitches. Line that up and sew all the way down to the other end, just like I did on the other side of this panel. Once you've cut the seam back, iron it flat. Just make sure it's really ironed into place, because you don't want to have it bulky behind here. Once it's ironed back, fold it to line up with the outside edge of your seam and flatten that out too. And then once that's done, I'm going to fold that into there so it covers the seam like that, right into that groove, and secure that too. Just make sure everything looks nice and even, and I'm going to make my way all the way to the other end of this length, and then on the front nothing shows. Now the lining and each one of these curtain panels has to have the bottom hem sewn into place. So I'm going to go all the way across, trying to keep the seam there in line. Sometimes they walk, don't worry if they do, it's not a problem. As I come into the other side, the seam has slipped slightly, but I'm not worried about that. And straight across. So now I'm going to put the lining in. I'm going to make sure that the lining is at least an inch up from the bottom. Fold that in and that, and I'm going to secure that with a pin around about there, because I'm going to sew from the bottom up. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull the lining into the fold of the fabric like that and pin it as I go up. Now it might alter, but that's okay. Sometimes one fabric will walk against another, whether you want it to or not. Just make sure you've pinned it, because then at least you know how much the fabric's walked. It won't take long to line this in, section by section on one side. I'll get this side sewn in, and then I'll work out what I'm doing on the other side. I'm just going to put this underneath. Make sure that everything is lined up and even at the bottom, and lift that needle up a little bit. Slide it underneath there. I'm lining the inside here along the side of the fold of that. I'm going to go forward and then back, and then on up. Because it's a little bit bulky there, I usually keep 2 fingers on it just to keep it straight. Now you will find that one fabric will walk across the other one. Let it, and just make sure that that is right in on that fold, so it keeps nice and even. And I'll take the pins out as I get to them. Don't pull it, just straighten it out. In order for the lining to fit, I did have to take an inch off. What I'm going to do is bring that up so that it will match this side, because I want the lining to be at the same height. I could measure it, but I'm not going to. So long as it's within, that'd be fine. And I'm going to tuck that into that corner, roll that over and pin it. I've already lined everything up and made sure that it's ironed into place. Now I'm going to make my way up from the base, as I did on the other side. Just put the lining in, roll that over and fold and pin as I go up. Now sometimes you can sew from the top down. Out of all of these curtains, the first one went in nicely from top down. The other 2 I ended up having to start from the bottom up. So I'm not even going to risk it. I'm going to work from the bottom up with this one, because I don't have time today to mess around and undo seams. Again, make sure everything's nice and tidy in there. You can work from top to bottom, but as I said, this has just been a project that hasn't wanted to work from bottom to top. Lift that all the way up, set it down, and this time I'm running the side of this hem along this side of the foot. I'm going to do forward and back. Make sure the foot's down. These walking feet sometimes look like they're down, but they're not actually down. You don't want any problems with them. Get onto that lining, remove the first pin. Just like I did before, I want that to be running on that inside fold. Now with the fabric, I'm going to have to roll it and push it through under here. Now this sewing machine doesn't have very much clearance, which is a little bit irritating, but it works. Trouble is, these curtains are so long, so I'll twist it and pull it and make sure that it's doing what it needs to do. I roll it like that, it'll fit better. And again, just make sure that is on the fold. You don't want it folding back round, you just want it flat. And try to feed the fabric in from the front in a straight line. It does get a little bit awkward when you're having to do it this way. It will work, it's just a little bit slower when you're lining everything up. Just carefully, slowly make your way up, lining everything where it needs to be. And try to make sure that this seam remains flat on the underside. Doesn't matter how much you push the fabric under, that has to remain flat. And also the fabric going underneath, because you don't want that getting caught up and you have to undo everything. Sometimes you need to open that up, pop that down, and then twist it all back into place. This is the photo she sent me as to how some curtains are done in her house. What I'm going to do is make sure my fingers look about the same as hers and start measuring. The curtains are meant to be 99 from the base of the rail to the floor. So if I do that, it looks like it's 1 3/4 inches to the base of here. And then if I do that, it's 2 inches from the base of there to the clip. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make them 98 inches, which takes 1 inch off. It should lift them from the floor, and then I'm going to drop that down 1 inch down from the top, and I'm thinking that should be about right. If it's wrong, she can always let me know and I can alter them. Using cameras, especially if you can make something as big as your fingers, is quite a good idea. Line my ruler there and measure up to 30 inches. I'm going to do 3 lengths at 30, which makes 90, and then an 8 at the top. Do that on both sides. Scoot that down, reline everything, line the base with the pin there, and then I'm going to put my next pin at the 30 again. Line this one up with that pin. I usually work with 3 pins, so I'm going to take the redundant one out and put it back here, which now makes this one redundant, and I'll move everything down and do the next part of the measuring. The reason why I put the pins on the front is so that I can fold them and I don't have to take them out from the underside. They're right where I need them to be. I'm going to pull them out sideways. I'm going to shake the fabric a little bit, make sure that's firm across the top. I'm going to put the iron on that end, remove the pin, and then pull out to the other end and steam all the way across. And that should give me a nice firm top. If it was a wider piece of fabric, I would do a center measurement. It's a firm fabric and it's only 36 inches, so it doesn't have a middle piece. Take that out as well and iron to the end. Reset everything so it's all in place. Push the lining up into the top if you need to. I can see where the lining's meant to be, so I'm not going to worry about that. And then I'm going to take it down and measure. Now make sure that you have lifted the top bit of fabric away from the bottom, because that is a nasty surprise when you realise you've cut the top of your curtain off. And yes, I have done it, and I'm tired and under pressure. And then you've got to sew all the bits back in and hope nobody notices. So I'm going to make my way across here like this to the other side. And pop that under there and move it up so it is about 1 inch down from there. What they did was just clip them into these bands here, so it should work. Let's go forward and back, and also I've lined it up on the 1 inch mark, which is just here, and I'm going to run that all the way along here. I will push the lining up into the fold. That's the only thing I'm really interested in doing, and allowing that to go into place. I can judge where the inch is going to be. I'm not pulling the tape, I'm just allowing the tape to go into position. You don't want to pull any of this if you can help it, because they're meant to be flat curtains. This tape I brought with me from the UK, so it is really old. And I'll make my way to the other end. And I did this because I really don't like all those bits of metal. So it should be well and truly hidden behind the top here. What I need to do is line that up so it goes in slightly. I'll cut this back just a wee tad, about half an inch probably. And fold that over the end like that so that it doesn't show at the front. Nobody's going to see it. It goes on the back. Drop the needle down, lift the foot up and turn. If you were to be using the threads here to pull it tight, they're not very obvious, but they're right here. On the edge that the curtains meet, you go up and down to make sure that they are secure. I don't have to do it, I could have left it open, I just like the ends to be rather neat. Now, on the other end, I would pull the tails out that I was pulling if I was to pull this up and make sure that they're not caught in, but because I don't need those tails, I'm going to catch everything in and go down. I just feel it looks nice and neat on either end if you do so. Some people will, some people won't. This is where, if you had tails that you were pulling, you could put a little bag on the outside edge. So when you pull your tails up and knot them in, you could put them in and then they're not just hanging down. But that's, you know, a personal issue. I just like things to be neat. And now I'm going to work my way all the way across to the other side and finish. And do forward and back here, just to keep things tight. All I've got to do is iron them and make them look a little bit neater than they do. The fabric got a little bit wrinkled when I was making them, which is not unusual. And linen always creases, but I'll try to get as much out as I can. This is the bathroom that I'm dressing with the pink fabric. She has windows either side on both corners of the room. So let's look at the curtains now that they're hanging. As you can see, the windows look even because they've got 2 curtains on each one. And although there's quite a bit of curtaining in the centre there, I don't think it looks over the top. It looks about even. It's difficult because this window's right into the corner, so I think the break here just lets it look a little bit more open. And this is what they look like when they're shut. I think she made a good choice. You don't really want too much curtaining behind a bath, so the flat curtains are ideal. She's thrilled with them. Thank you for joining me on this project. They've gone in really well. The hooks come down, they should be hidden nicely behind all of this and give a nice neat look to the bottom of the pole. I think it turned out pretty well. If you'd like to hear more from me, please subscribe, hit the bell button, and a few thumbs up would be brilliant. And in the meantime, take care. See you later. Ciao.